You're streaming CBS News Bay Area.
And we are live on CBS News Bay Area. Today is a first alert weather day, and we have been tracking an atmospheric river all afternoon. Thanks for joining us today. I'm Ann Makovec. Some good news, all evacuation orders have been lifted in Santa Cruz County, and the National Weather Service has canceled its flood advisory for the Bay Area. There are still some evacuation warnings in effect right now in Sonoma County. Those are for low-lying areas along the Russian River from unincorporated Healdsburg to Jenner. Let's bring in meteorologist Darren Peck, who has been watching this and keeping us posted the entire time. It looks like, are we almost done?
Yeah, we're still about 80% done with the rain.
Okay. Before we get there, sorry, also want to talk about the earthquakes that we've seen. It's been a very busy day.
There's a lot going on.
In the CBS News Bay Area newsroom, because we had a series of earthquakes all around Hayward, the largest coming in just before 2 o'clock at a 3.7, and Darren has been tracking that for us as well.
So I want to put these on the map so we can get it kind of our reference around where this is on the Hayward Fault, and then also talk a little bit about the sequence, because, you know, it wasn't just one. There were three. And they were progressive. So the first thing we'll do is let's get our bearings on here. Hayward Fault, right through the East Bay. So this is the San Andreas is by far the most notorious fault in California, and certainly here in the Bay. And that's the one that goes just off the coast. I'm going to show you the map with the faults in a second. But this one happened on the Hayward Fault, and I just am going to bring up a map for a little more perspective on this. So we get our bearings on here. There's two ways we're looking at the map on here. The light shades of blue show you where these were felt. So first and foremost, these were felt very lightly. There are no reports of damage from any of this. These are well below 4s. You would not expect to get any damage from earthquakes of this magnitude here in the Bay. But you would expect to feel them. And that's what this map is showing you, color-coded. It's light blue on here. Here's the epicenter. More on that in a second. We'll pull out a little more detail. But the areas in light blue on here correspond to a Keon with shaking intensity. So these are all well into the weak category. So you've got the San Andreas Fault on here. That's the one that goes along the coast. Let's go find the three that happened today over here in the East Bay. So you can see the Hayward Fault. So this happened right on the Hayward Fault. And there are several in here. There's about 5, actually, that have been recorded over the course of the last, coming up on, say, 7-8 hours. But there are 3 notable ones, and the sequence went progressively. So 503 was the first one at 2.7, barely felt. Then this one got a lot more people's attention. Right before noon, it was a 3.4. And then just as we were getting ready here to go on at 2 o'clock to talk about the atmospheric river, we had a 3.7. We didn't feel this one here. And we're in downtown San Francisco. Nobody in this building felt it, but you could see from the Did You Feel It map, it was felt in other places. So a little cluster like this, the Hayward Fault is probably the most significant fault in the Bay Area when it comes to our risk potential. So use today as a good reminder that this fault is going to send us little reminders like this, that it can go, and there's a high degree of probability within the next 30 years that we get at least a 6.7 on the Hayward Fault. So while we cannot do predictions for earthquakes in terms of giving you a time, date, and place of when to be ready, we can say there is a high degree of certainty that at some point within the next 30 years, this is the most likely fault that will deliver the next significant earthquake in the Bay. So today's just a little kind of a check-in on that. There's no reason to take anything serious away from the fact that they were 3 and that they were progressive and in intensity. That does not give us any cause of concern that there's more coming. But on the flip side of that, don't be surprised if you do feel a little more shaking in the East Bay, and we'll update you should any more of those occur. All right, let's get back to the storm and the issue at hand, which is today's rain. So we still have a flood watch in place for the entire Bay Area. This is different from what Ann was talking about. She was referencing flood advisories and higher degree issuances from a flooding standpoint, particularly down in the Santa Cruz Mountains. Right now, we're just looking at a flood watch in general for the Bay as a whole. And when we look at rainfall totals, this will kind of help explain why that is. Let's start up here in the North Bay. We're going to eventually walk this down to the Santa Cruz Mountains. But the first thing I want to do is start here. We've picked up a little over 2 inches of rain so far in Santa Rosa. This is going back since this started. We could consider this about 18 hours ago because it really started around 5, 6 o'clock. So almost 24 hours ago, really. Got a little over 2 inches in Santa Rosa, but you've gotten more like 3 to 5 inches in the higher elevations that surround the communities of Sonoma County. About 1.5 inches here for San Francisco. 2.5, actually closer to 2 3/4 inches on the peninsula. So you still have some roadway issues. And that's going to be a concern Bay Area wide. This is enough rain, you're going to encounter some low-lying intersection stuff and challenges on the road. But the one area which really does need to be pointed out with a little more detail is the Santa Cruz Mountains. Boulder Creek, there is a weather station just uphill from town. And you've already gotten 5 inches of rain there. This is why this was a primary focus. That's kind of like our gauge to see how the watersheds through the Santa Cruz Mountains are going to be subjected to this one. The San Lorenzo River was a primary concern leading into the storm. We have gotten through the highest degree of risk and concern now. We do not anticipate the San Lorenzo to be a significant flood concern from this. That is good news, and that's recent from the National Weather Service. But we're all still in a flood watch. So even if you're in the Santa Cruz Mountains, near any of the smaller streams and creeks, just stay aware of your surroundings from now until we get to Saturday morning, because this is enough rain, it's all got to flow through the watersheds. And you could see some issues through time on this. All right, talking about the rain in terms of being through the worst of it, let's try and get some perspective on where we are with the last hour of live radar, because this will kind of give us our bearings on how this storm is behaving now. And when we look at just the last hour of it, we can see that we had our widespread rain over the North Bay, and that's kind of starting to clear a bit. Maybe some heavier cells there about to move over Marin. And this is a good example of what the next, say, honestly, 12 hours. We probably still have another 12 hours to go, where the radar probably won't be this covered over the bay, but you could see little cells like that that will continue to move through. Right now there's one over Marin, but there could be over any location Bay Area wide from now through tomorrow morning. Let's put it in a futurecast and watch that. So what we're going to play forward, it's going to go kind of fast, is I'm going to start this from the early afternoon today, and I'm going to let the futurecast play us all the way through to tomorrow morning. And you'll see the widespread steady stuff clears out. That's what's happened over the last few hours. There's that little cell in the North Bay now, and this is what happens for the rest of tonight. On again, off again, hit and miss. More time when your part of the bay is not getting rained on than when it is. But every once in a while, a cell will move through, and everybody will get on again, off again showers from now until late tomorrow. Watch what happens here. That gets us past sunrise, and this is when it starts clearing out. So by the time we've gotten to like 10, pretty much done. That gets us through tomorrow. One other thing that we should talk about on here is the wind. And that's been a factor that has been pretty widely felt across the bay as a whole. So we still have some wind issuances from the National Weather Service. The areas that are kind of gold shaded along the coast here show you where we've had the potential for 50-mile-an-hour winds. In fact, if we take a look at how the wind speeds have behaved so far, we've seen the strongest of the wind that we're going to see. And it's going to get a little better from here. But watch what happens as we put the wind streams on here. So let's keep our vantage point out here off the coast for a second, because it's going to start from the afternoon and then play us through to tomorrow. So you've got deep shades of red on here from the morning and afternoon, higher wind speeds. But as we let this play forward, everything kind of starts lying down. The direction becomes more northwesterly, which is how you know we're just in the usual flow over the bay. It's not being driven by storm. And we're done. So the wind advisories are still in place, but we've seen the worst of the wind. Just know that within the next few hours, you could still get a gust up to around 25 or 30, which is enough. You could get broken branches and maybe some minor debris in roadways. So those are some things to be aware of. Big picture view on the radar. There's one other aspect to this storm that we still need to discuss, and that's the impact this could have on Southern California. So we're going to say goodbye to the local rain that we've already looked at. Look how the storm's put together. See the area of low pressure here? The atmospheric river is getting pulled up to the south of that and wrapped into that low. So we got it this morning. LA is now getting it into the afternoon. We need to wait for this kind of engine of the storm up here to finally kick inland before this rain stops. In other words, you can see it now. There's the atmospheric river at this point pointed right at LA. That was the heavy and widespread rain we were getting last night and early this morning. That has now marched southward, and now by late afternoon, it's just now focused on Southern California. And that now becomes a concern for all the burn scars. Look at the rain here. It's kind of like a direct hit. It's a couple of different ways to look at this. We can color in the areas of greatest concern, but this we've known for a number of days now that the mountains down here in Southern California had a higher likelihood of experiencing flash flooding, but it's not just flash flooding. This could lead to debris flows, which is kind of a different categorization. This is not simple mudslides. A debris flow is where entire slopes of hills come down, including whole trees, boulders, cars, anything that gets stuck in it. And it comes down at a rate of speed that there is no getting out of the way. It's totally different. This happened in Montecito about 4 years ago, and it was national headlines. It could happen in Southern California today because of the vulnerability from those two burn scars. Take a look at the futurecast on here. Look at the time. So they're just now getting into the heart of the plume of this atmospheric river. Heaviest rain for them. We just went ahead to 6 o'clock, and it's still going. For perspective on here, here's downtown LA. Eaton Fire sits right about here. Palisades Fire sits right in through here. So those two regions are under widespread, steady, continuous rain for several hours. And then we get into the afternoon, late afternoon and early evening after sunset. And now the isolated cells show up with thunderstorms embedded in them. And those could also be problematic on their own. They're really not out of the woods until we get to tomorrow, probably sunrise. But I think the greatest 4 hours of concern for LA from a landslide or debris flow concern is really going to be from now through about 8, 9 o'clock tonight. So a lot of preparations down there, and hopefully we don't end up with anything to report on from this, but we'll be watching it as will every national outlet. And of course, our sister station down in LA is all hands on deck for this. All right, that's the headline down there. And so we're almost done with our share. The way I've been saying it is we got 80% of this storm out of the way for us. We've just got to get through like tomorrow morning.
Okay, very good. Well, we definitely could use some time to dry out. Yeah. Lot of ponding and pooling around the Bay Area today on those roadways. So I hope that evening commute is going to go well for everybody. Keep an eye on that as well. Stay with us all evening as we continue to track this storm, and we're going to have updates throughout the night on our evening edition as well. Have a good one. Thanks for watching. You can always get all the latest headlines and weather over on KPIX Plus. And remember to like and click the button on the bottom left of your screen to subscribe for the biggest Bay Area news.